In the heart of New York City, the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden hue over the sprawling metropolis. From his opulent penthouse, William Carter surveyed his empire with a meticulous eye. The glass walls of his high-rise offered a breathtaking view of the city he owned, towering skyscrapers that kissed the clouds and streets bustling with life. Yet as he stood there, a deep disdain brewed within him, not for the city itself, but for its less fortunate inhabitants. "Look at them," William scoffed, his voice dripping with contempt. "Pathetic." The room was filled with the opulence of his success, expensive art lining the walls, designer furniture, and a bar stocked with the finest spirits. Yet none of it brought him joy. Instead, he felt an insatiable hunger for more power, more wealth, more dominance. He leaned against the cool glass, the city lights twinkling like stars below, and felt a sense of superiority that only money could buy. "Another day, another dollar," he muttered, a smirk playing on his lips. The world outside was filled with strife and struggle, but here, in his cocoon of privilege, he was untouchable. Meanwhile, on the streets far below, 12-year-old Emily shuffled through the snow-covered pavement, her breath visible in the frigid air. The chill bit at her skin, but the cold was a familiar companion. Orphaned at a young age, she had learned to navigate the harsh realities of life without the warmth of family. Each day was a fight for survival, and today was no different. Clutching her worn-out violin, Emily made her way to a crowded corner near a subway entrance where the sounds of the city faded into a distant hum. She took a deep breath, her heart racing with a mix of fear and hope. She had been practicing for hours, her fingers aching from the cold, but the music was her solace. It was her way of escaping the harshness of her reality, however temporary that escape might be. As she positioned her violin beneath her chin, she closed her eyes and let the music flow. The notes danced through the air, weaving a tapestry of emotion that resonated with the few passers-by who paused to listen. A couple of coins clinked into her open case, and for a fleeting moment, she felt seen. "Hey, kid, you've got talent," an older man shouted as he dropped a dollar bill before continuing on his way. Emily opened her eyes, a small smile breaking through her somber expression. It was moments like these that kept her going, the fleeting acknowledgement that she existed in a world that often overlooked people like her. Yet deep down, she longed for something more than just survival. She dreamed of a life filled with purpose, a life where she wouldn't have to play for scraps. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows down the street, a group of children from her shelter gathered nearby, their faces glowing with excitement and anticipation. They were all going to a charity gala hosted by Carter Enterprises. The shelter director had mentioned that the event aimed to raise funds for underprivileged youth, and although Emily had mixed feelings about charity, she couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Perhaps this was her chance to be noticed, to connect with someone who could change her life. Later that evening, dressed in a second-hand dress that barely fit her, Emily stood among the other children in the grand hall of a lavish venue. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above, illuminating the elegant decorations, while the scent of gourmet food wafted through the air. It was a world apart from her usual surroundings, and for a moment she felt like a princess. "Wow, it's so beautiful here," one of the other kids exclaimed, wide-eyed. Emily nodded, looking around in awe, but beneath her excitement lay a tinge of anxiety. It was hard to ignore the stark contrast between the glimmering wealth surrounding her and the reality of her life. She reminded herself to stay focused on her goal, to ask William Carter for a donation, to make her presence known. As the evening progressed, Emily watched as the wealthy mingled, their laughter echoing against the high ceilings. She spotted William across the room, a tall figure exuding confidence and authority, surrounded by admirers. The way he commanded, attention only fueled her determination. "Go on, Emily, you can do this," she whispered to herself, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. With her heart pounding, she made her way through the crowd, the sound of her heels echoing on the polished floor. As she approached him, she felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. He turned to face her, his piercing blue eyes narrowing slightly. As he assessed her, "What do you want, kid?" he asked, his tone dismissive, a stark contrast to the warmth of the gala. Emily swallowed hard, the words catching in her throat. Mr. Carter, I'm from the shelter." "I don't have time for sob stories," he interrupted, his voice cold and devoid of empathy. "I'm sure there are plenty of others who need more help than you." Her heart shattered at his words, the sting of rejection cutting deeper than she could have imagined. She stood frozen for a moment, the vibrant world around her fading into a blur. The laughter and chatter of the gala felt distant, almost mocking. "I just thought—" She started, but he turned away, dismissing her as if she were nothing more than a nuisance. Emily's vision blurred as tears stung her eyes. She turned on her heel and hurried away, the weight of his contempt heavy on her shoulders. In that moment, a vow solidified in her heart. She would never again rely on anyone's pity. She would find a way to escape the cycle of despair, to carve her own path without the need for charity or benevolence from the likes of William Carter. As she stepped out onto the cold streets, the night air bit at her skin, but she welcomed it. It was a reminder of her resilience, of her resolve to rise above her circumstances. She clutched her violin tightly, the instrument now a symbol of her dreams and aspirations. With each step she took, she felt the fire inside her grow stronger. No longer would she be invisible to the world. She would fight for her future, and one day she would stand on the other side of this divide, transformed and empowered. The shadows of the night whispered promises of hope, and Emily embraced them, determined to rewrite her story. As the years passed, Emily's resolve transformed her from a determined orphan into a formidable scholar at Harvard University. The crisp autumn leaves crunched beneath her feet as she walked across the campus, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Each day was a reminder of the long journey she had undertaken, from the frigid streets of New York to the hallowed halls of one of the most prestigious institutions in the world. She often recalled the day she stood before the cold, dismissive gaze of William Carter, who had shattered her childhood dreams with a single contemptuous glance. That moment had etched itself into her soul, fueling her ambition and igniting a fierce desire to be more than just a forgotten girl from a shelter. In her dorm room, Emily surrounded herself with textbooks, notes, and a whiteboard filled with equations and business theories. Her scholarship was a lifeline, and she was determined to make the most of it. She spent countless nights studying, with the faint glow of her desk lamp illuminating her passionate pursuit of knowledge. Friends often found her in the library, lost in the world of finance and economics. But to Emily, every hour spent learning was a step closer to her dreams. One evening, as she reviewed for her final exams, her roommate, Sarah, burst into the room with an exuberant smile. "Emily, you won't believe what just happened. I overheard some upperclassmen talking about a networking event with top investment firms next week. You have to go." Emily looked up, her brow furrowed. "Networking? But I'm just a scholarship student. I don't belong in those circles." "That's exactly why you need to go. You're brilliant, Emily. This is your chance to show them what you're made of. Don't let your past define you." Reassured by Sarah's enthusiasm, Emily decided to attend. The event was held in a lavish hotel ballroom, adorned with crystal chandeliers and plush carpets. As she entered, the stark contrast between her upbringing and the opulence surrounding her struck her. She felt out of place among the well-dressed attendees, their laughter ringing like a foreign language in her ears. But she straightened her back and reminded herself of her purpose. "Good evening," What brings you here? A suave man in a tailored suit approached her, his smile warm yet assessing. I'm Emily. I'm here to network and explore opportunities in investment, she replied, her voice steady despite her nerves. Ah, ambitious. I like that. I'm Mark Thompson from Thompson Investments. We're always on the lookout for fresh talent. Tell me, what sets you apart? Emily took a deep breath, her mind racing through her accomplishments and aspirations. I've worked hard to earn my place here. I understand the value of perseverance and innovative thinking. I want to redefine how investments can uplift communities, not just line pockets. Mark's eyebrows raised in surprise. Impressive. We need more voices like yours in this industry. Here's my card. Let's keep in touch. As she walked away from the conversation, Emily felt a surge of confidence. This was just the beginning. Little did she know, back in his high-rise office, William Carter was still trapped in the illusion of invincibility, his empire expanding unchecked. He reveled in his power, but remained blind to the cracks forming beneath the surface. William's office was a testament to his success. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering skyline, sleek furniture, and an art collection that screamed extravagance. He leaned back in his chair, a glass of scotch in hand, as he scanned the latest reports on his investments. Another record quarter, he murmured to himself, a satisfied smirk creeping across his face. Sir, his assistant Jessica interrupted, there are whispers about some of our competitors facing scrutiny. We should consider tightening our strategies. William waved her off dismissively. Let them deal with their problems. We're untouchable. I've built this empire on my terms. Nothing can bring us down. But as the days turned into weeks, the whispers grew louder. Scandals began to surface, rumors of unethical practices and questionable financial dealings. William, in his arrogance, chose to ignore them, believing his wealth would shield him from any repercussions. Meanwhile, Emily's hard work paid off. She graduated with honors, proudly clutching her diploma as she stood among her peers, beaming with accomplishment. In the crowd, her friends cheered, but her thoughts drifted back to her childhood dreams and the promise she made to herself to rise above and never allow anyone to belittle her again. Shortly after graduation, she received an offer to lead a fledgling investment firm, a venture that aimed to make a difference in the lives of the less fortunate. This opportunity was a dream come true, and she dove headfirst into her new role, determined to create a legacy that would inspire others. As Emily built her firm, word began to spread about her innovative strategies and her commitment to social responsibility. Investors who had once flocked to William now turned their attention to her, intrigued by her vision. She welcomed them with open arms, her heart swelling with pride. Emily, we need to discuss our direction. Her new team gathered in the sleek conference room, their eyes shining with anticipation. I envision a firm that prioritizes ethical investments, one that empowers communities while generating sustainable profits, she declared, her voice unwavering. Are you sure we can compete with established giants like Carter Enterprises? One analyst asked, a hint of skepticism in his tone. Emily smiled confidently. We're not here to compete. We're here to disrupt the status quo. If we remain true to our values, success will follow. As the firm gained traction, William remained blissfully ignorant of the storm brewing on the horizon. He continued to indulge in lavish parties and high-stakes deals, convinced that his empire was invulnerable. But beneath the glitzy surface, the foundation was beginning to crack. Then, the inevitable happened. Investigators descended upon his offices, armed with documents and accusations that would shake the very core of his empire. Whispers escalated into shouts, and the world that William had meticulously crafted began to unravel. Sir, We need to address this immediately, Jessica urged, her voice trembling with urgency as she laid out the mounting evidence against him. The board is demanding answers. William's face paled as he realized the gravity of the situation. This is a witch hunt. I've done nothing wrong. They can't take this from me. But the storm was relentless. Investors began to flee, pulling their funds and tarnishing his reputation. William's world, once filled with power and prestige, spiraled into chaos. He sat alone in his grand office, surrounded by stacks of paperwork that felt like tombstones, marking the death of his empire. As he stared out the window, the city he once looked down upon became a blur of lights and shadows, reflecting the turmoil within him. "What have I done?" he whispered, the weight of his arrogance crashing down upon him. The thought of the little girl he had dismissed years ago crept into his mind, a ghost haunting him with the echoes of his past decisions. The realization hit him like a tidal wave. He had failed, not just himself, but also the people he had trampled on in his quest for power. In that moment of despair, he understood that the empire he had built was nothing without integrity, and he was nothing without the people who had supported him along the way. While William grappled with his downfall, Emily thrived, her firm becoming a beacon of hope in a world overshadowed by greed. She had turned her pain into purpose, and as she watched the news reports about William's unraveling empire, a complex mix of emotions surged within her. Part of her felt vindicated, but another part wondered if there was still a chance for redemption for the man who once loomed so large in her life. In the quiet moments of the night, as she prepared for the challenges ahead, Emily reflected on her journey. She had come so far, and while she had every right to revel in William's misfortune, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than mere revenge. As the city pulsed with life outside her window, she resolved to rise above the past, embracing the future with a sense of purpose that could reshape not only her life, but also the lives of those she hoped to uplift. William Carter sat alone in the dimly lit cafe, a stark contrast to the opulence he had once surrounded himself with. His tailored suit, although still expensive, hung loosely on his frame, a reminder of the weight he had lost, not just in pounds, but in stature. The once dominant figure in the corporate world now felt like a ghost of his former self, haunted by the echoes of laughter and scorn from his past. He stared into his coffee cup, the liquid swirling like the chaos of his life. He had lost everything, his fortune, his empire, and his friends. The isolation was suffocating, yet the memory of Emily's piercing gaze at the charity gala loomed, larger than ever. "Mr. Carter?" A timid voice broke through his thoughts. It was a young waiter, nervously shifting his weight. "You have a phone call. It's Emily Langston." William's heart raced. Emily was now a powerful executive, the CEO of a thriving investment firm. The thought of speaking to her filled him with dread and a flicker of hope. He was desperate, clinging to the notion that perhaps she could help him salvage what remained of his reputation. "Put it through," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. As the call connected, he could hear the faint sound of bustling activity in her office. It was a world he had once dominated, but now he was an outsider looking in. "William," Emily's voice was cool and professional, yet beneath it he could detect a hint of caution. "Emily, thank you for taking my call. I know I don't deserve your time, but I'm in a difficult position," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I've lost everything, and I need your help. I want to make amends for my past mistakes." There was a moment of silence on the other end, and William could almost hear her weighing his words. "What kind of help are you looking for?" she finally asked. "I need a chance to prove that I can change. I want to work for you, but I understand if you don't want me near your company," he admitted, feeling vulnerable. Emily's laughter was cold and devoid of warmth. You want to work for me as what? A consultant, a junior analyst? You know that's not what you want, William. I'll do anything, he insisted, his voice rising with desperation. I want to start over. Please just give me a chance. Fine, she said, her tone shifting to one of calculated indifference. You can come in for an interview, but I won't promise you anything. I'll take it, he replied, a wave of relief washing over him. Thank you, Emily. I won't let you down. Let's hope not, she replied before hanging up, leaving him with a mix of gratitude and anxiety. He had no idea what awaited him, but he was determined to prove himself. The next day, William walked into Emily's sleek office, the modern design starkly contrasting the chaos of his life. The walls were adorned with abstract art, and the floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city he had once ruled. He felt small, dwarfed by the very skyline he had helped to create. As he stepped further inside, he noticed the young executives who worked for Emily. They were all focused, typing away on their laptops, unaware of the man who had once commanded their attention. William, Emily greeted him, her voice smooth but lacking warmth. Welcome. Let's get started. She gestured towards a chair across from her desk. He sat down, trying to maintain an air of confidence despite the knot forming in his stomach. I appreciate this opportunity, Emily, he said, attempting to sound sincere. Let's get one thing clear, she interrupted, her eyes narrowing. You're not here to regain your former glory. You're here to learn how to work for a living, and I expect you to take this position seriously. Of course, he nodded, swallowing hard. I understand. Good, she replied, her expression unyielding. You'll be assisting with market research and analysis. I'm assigning you to work with a junior analyst, Jake. He'll be your supervisor, and I expect you to follow his lead. Jake? William echoed, the name sounding familiar. How old is he? 25, Emily replied, a hint of amusement dancing in her eyes. I trust he'll show you the ropes. William felt the sting of humiliation at the thought of reporting to someone so much younger than him. But the memory of Emily's disdain from their first encounter steeled his resolve. I won't let you down, he stated, his voice firmer. This time, let's hope so, she said coolly, dismissing him with a wave of her hand. You can start tomorrow. I'll have Jake brief you on your tasks. As he left her office, William felt the weight of her gaze on his back. He was stepping into a world that had once been his domain, but now felt foreign and unwelcoming. The laughter of the younger executives echoed in his ears, a constant reminder of his fall from grace. The next day, William arrived at the office early, determined to make a good impression. He found Jake, a bright-eyed young man with tousled hair and an infectious enthusiasm, already at his desk. Hey there! You must be William, Jake said, flashing a wide grin. I've heard a lot about you. Excited to have you on board. William forced a smile, feeling the awkwardness of the situation. Thanks, Jake. I'm looking forward to working with you. Great. So let's dive in. I've pulled up some reports for you to review. We'll start with market trends and see how we can position ourselves better, Jake explained, gesturing towards his computer screen. As the hours passed, William struggled to keep up. The fast-paced environment was a far cry from the boardrooms he was accustomed to. He felt every bit of his age and experience weighing down on him as he sat across from Jake, who effortlessly navigated through data and charts. William, do you need help with that? Jake asked, noticing William struggled to understand. The software. No, I've got it, William replied, forcing a chuckle. Just a bit rusty, that's all. All right, Jake said, though he looked unconvinced. Just let me know if you want me to go over anything. I'm here to help. William felt a mix of gratitude and humiliation. Here he was, a man who had once commanded a room, now struggling to grasp the basics of market analysis under the supervision of a much younger colleague. The laughter from the younger executives echoed in his mind, a harsh reminder of his fall from grace. As the days turned into weeks, the humiliation gnawed at him. Every time he entered the office, he felt the judgmental eyes of his co-workers. Whispers followed him down the hall, and he could sense the amusement as he fumbled through his tasks. The once feared billionaire was now a source of entertainment for those he had once looked down upon. One afternoon, during a particularly grueling meeting, a young analyst named Sarah casually tossed out a joke about William's past failures. "Hey, remember when William used to dictate our market strategies from his penthouse? Now he's just happy to be in the room." Laughter erupted, and William felt his face flush with embarrassment. He forced a smile, but inside, anger and humiliation bubbled. He had come here to prove himself, to start anew, but the constant mockery was eroding his resolve. Later that day, he found himself in the break room, staring at his reflection in the stainless steel refrigerator. The man looking back at him was a shadow of his former self. He felt lost, drowning in a sea of doubt and despair. But somewhere deep inside, a flicker of determination ignited. He would not let this humiliation defeat him. He had to work harder, to show Emily and everyone else that he was capable of change. "Hey, William," Jake's cheerful voice interrupted his thoughts. "We're heading out for a team lunch. You coming?" William hesitated, the thought of facing more mockery making his stomach churn. But he knew he couldn't hide forever. "Sure, I'll join." As they walked to the restaurant, William tried to engage with his colleagues, but the laughter and camaraderie felt foreign. The younger executives exchanged jokes and stories, and he felt like an outsider looking in. The conversation flowed effortlessly around him while he struggled to find his place. "William, how does it feel to be back in the trenches?" One of them joked, eliciting laughter from the table. "Yeah, I bet you miss your penthouse views," another chimed in. William took a deep breath, forcing a smile. "You know, it's refreshing to see things from a different perspective," he replied, though the words felt hollow. As the lunch continued, he remained quiet, absorbing their banter. In that moment, he realized that he needed to confront his past, not just for himself, but for those he had wronged. He could either wallow in humiliation or rise from the ashes of his former self. By the time they returned to the office, William had made a silent vow. He would prove himself, not just to Emily, but to everyone who doubted him. The path to redemption would be difficult, but he was ready to embrace the challenge. The boardroom was an expansive space, its walls adorned with abstract art that served as a facade for the corporate machinations that unfolded within. The long, polished table gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, reflecting the tension that hung in the air as William sat at one end, a mere shadow of the man he once was. His hands trembled slightly as he looked across the table at the younger executives, their faces a mix of curiosity and barely concealed disdain. "All right, let's get started," the new chairwoman, a sharp-witted analyst named Sarah, announced, her voice cutting through the air like a knife. She was in her early 30s, her career trajectory having soared while Williams had plummeted. "We're here to discuss the Q2 projections and the new marketing strategy for the upcoming product launch." William attempted to focus, pushing aside the gnawing discomfort that had settled in his chest. He had spent countless hours preparing for this moment, hoping that today would be the day he could regain a semblance of respect. But as the meeting progressed, it became increasingly clear that the room was not on his side. "William, could you elaborate on the discrepancies in last quarter's financial report?" Sarah inquired, her tone deceptively polite. "Of course," William replied, steeling himself. "The numbers were affected by—" A young analyst interjected, his voice brimming with confidence. "Actually, if I may, the discrepancies seem to stem from miscalculations in the revenue projections you submitted. Our internal audit indicated that the figures were inflated by nearly 20%. Laughter erupted around the table, a chorus of mockery that pierced William's fragile composure. He could see the smirks, the glances exchanged among his former colleagues, and it felt like a tidal wave crashing over him. Inflated, William repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. That's not... William, Sarah cut him off, her eyes narrowing. This isn't the first time we've seen inaccuracies in your reports. It's becoming a pattern. The laughter grew louder, a cacophony of scorn that echoed in William's ears. He felt heat rising to his face, a mix of humiliation and anger swirling within him. He had once commanded this room, but now he was nothing more than a relic, a punchline to a joke he didn't even understand. Let's take a 5-minute break, Sarah announced, clearly sensing the tension. As the executives stood and murmured among themselves, William remained seated, staring at the table, the polished surface reflecting not just his image, but the shambles of his career. In that moment, he felt utterly alone. The empire he had, built, the power he had wielded with such arrogance, now lay in ruins. He could almost hear the echoes of Emily's violin, the haunting melody that had once stirred something deep within him. But that was before he had dismissed her. Before he had allowed his greed to blind him to the humanity around him. As the executives trickled out of the room, William stood up, his legs feeling heavier than lead. He walked to the window, looking out over the sprawling city, the very same city he had once viewed with disdain. The streets below bustled with life. But now, instead of feeling superior, he felt an overwhelming sense of guilt. He saw the faces of those he had ignored, the invisible people he had dismissed without a second thought. They were not just numbers in a financial report. They were lives, stories, dreams that he had crushed under his relentless pursuit of wealth. William? Sarah's voice startled him as she returned to the room, her expression softer than before. I know this is tough, but you need to face the reality of your situation. It's not just about the company anymore. It's about you. What are you going to do? His throat tightened. I don't know, he admitted, the words tasting foreign on his tongue. I thought I could still turn this around, that I could prove myself. Prove yourself to whom? She asked, crossing her arms. To us, to the investors, or to yourself? You need to decide what you truly want. William turned back to the window, watching the city with new eyes. He had spent so long focused on climbing to the top that he had forgotten to look down, to see the people he had stepped on to reach his lofty heights. He thought of Emily, the girl whose dream he had crushed with a wave of his hand, the girl who had become a powerful CEO while he was reduced to this. I want to change, he finally said, his voice low but resolute. I want to make amends. I want to help. Sarah raised an eyebrow, skepticism evident in her posture. Help? After everything you've done? You think that's enough? I need to try, William insisted, the weight of his past pressing heavily on his shoulders. I've hurt too many people, and I need to find a way to do something good. Volunteering, Sarah suggested, sarcasm barely hidden in her voice. Is that what you have in mind? I don't know, he replied, his frustration bubbling to the surface. Maybe I can go to an orphanage. There are children who need help, who are like Emily. I can't change the past, but I can do something worthwhile now. The corners of Sarah's mouth twitched, a hint of respect breaking through her skepticism. That's a start, I suppose, but you'll have to put in the work. Redemption isn't easy, especially for someone like you. I'm aware, he said, a newfound determination igniting within him, but I'm willing to try. As the meeting adjourned and William stepped out into the bustling streets of New York, he felt a sense of purpose rising within him. The city pulsed with energy, but this time it was different. He was no longer a distant observer. He was part of the fabric of this life, woven into the struggles and dreams of those around him. He wandered through the streets, watching as families hurried past, children laughing and playing, unaware of the darkness that often lurked in the shadows. But he had seen it, the struggle, the despair, and it tugged at his heart. He recalled the faces of the children at the shelter, the hope that flickered in their eyes despite their circumstances. He had been so blind, so consumed by his own ambition that he had failed to see the world beyond his gilded cage. William made his way to an orphanage on the outskirts of the city, a worn-down building that had seen better days. As he entered, the musty smell of old books and worn toys greeted him. Children ran around, their laughter echoing off the walls. He approached the front desk where a kind-faced woman sat, her hair pulled back in a tidy bun. "Can I help? You?" she asked, her eyes narrowing with curiosity. "I want to volunteer," William announced, surprising even himself with the conviction in his voice. "I want to help these children." The woman studied him for a moment, her expression inscrutable. "You're serious?" "Yes," he replied, feeling the weight of his past pressing down on him. "I want to make a difference." She nodded slowly, as if weighing the sincerity of his words. "All right. But know this. These kids deserve honesty and compassion. If you're here just to ease your conscience, then don't waste their time." "I promise," William said, a newfound sincerity in his heart. "I want to be here for them." As he stepped into the playroom, he was greeted by a whirlwind of energy. Children of all ages were scattered about, some playing games, others reading, while a few simply sat quietly, lost in their thoughts. William felt the enormity of the moment wash over him. "Hey, you!" a little girl with curly hair shouted, running towards him. "Do you want to play?" William knelt down, his heart swelling as he looked into her eager eyes. "What are we playing?" "Tag! You have to catch me," she declared before darting away, her laughter ringing in the air. In that instant, William felt something shift within him. The laughter, the joy, it was contagious. As he chased after the little girl, he realized that this was the first time in a long while that he felt truly alive. He was not just a billionaire in ruins. He was a man seeking redemption, a man willing to confront his past and embrace a future filled with hope. The laughter of the children echoed in his ears as he played, and for the first time in years, he felt a sense of belonging. He had taken the first step on a long road to redemption, and the path ahead was uncertain, but he was ready to face it. William Carter stood outside Emily's office, a stark contrast to the man he once was. The sleek, modern glass building loomed over him, a symbol of the empire he had built and subsequently lost. As he waited, he felt the weight of his past bearing down on him, his arrogance, his cruelty, and the way he had dismissed her so callously years ago. He had come to realize that wealth and power meant little without respect and kindness. He drew in a deep breath, trying to calm the tumult of emotions swirling within him. Inside, Emily was at her desk, reviewing a report on small business investments. The sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting a warm glow over her workspace. She was thriving in her role as CEO, commanding respect and admiration from her colleagues. Yet as she read, her mind drifted back to their last encounter. William had been a shadow of his former self then, humbled and desperate. She had felt a flicker of something. Was it sympathy or pity? She shook her head, forcing herself to focus. "Emily, you have a visitor." Her assistant's voice broke through her thoughts. "Who is it?" she asked, her tone curious yet guarded. "It's William Carter," the assistant replied, hesitating as if sensing the tension in the air. Emily felt her heart race. The last time they had met, it had been a confrontation fueled by years of resentment and pain. She had dismissed him then, feeling powerful in her newfound position. But now, something was different. She sensed a shift in the air, a possibility for something she hadn't expected. Forgiveness. "Send him in," she said, her voice steady, though her hands trembled slightly. As the door opened, William stepped into the office. He looked older than she remembered, the lines on his face deeper, the light in his eyes dimmer. He wore a simple suit, devoid of the flashy accessories that had once screamed of his wealth and status. There was an air of humility around him, a stark contrast to the man who had once looked down on her from his penthouse. "Emily," he began, his voice soft yet firm, "thank you for seeing me." "William," she replied, crossing her arms defensively. "What do you want?" He swallowed hard, the lump in his throat a reminder of the gravity of his words. "I'm here to apologize for everything. The way I treated you, the way I treated so many people. I was arrogant and cruel. I see that now." Emily studied him closely, searching for any sign of insincerity, but all she found was a man stripped of his pride. "You think an apology is enough? You ruined lives, William?" "I know," he replied, his voice breaking slightly. I can't change the past, but I want to make amends. I want to help." "Help?" She scoffed, incredulous. "After everything you've done, you think you can just walk in here and offer help? What do you think that means?" "I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can be better," he said earnestly. "I want to help struggling small businesses, to give back to the community I once ignored. I want to make a difference, even if it's just a small one." Emily felt a storm of emotions rise within her. There was a part of her that wanted to reject him outright, to tell him that he was too late, that his chance for redemption had long passed. But another part of her, a part that had once been filled with hope and dreams, wondered if he was sincere. "Why should I trust you?" she challenged, her eyes narrowing. "How do I know this isn't just a ploy to regain your power?" "Because I don't want power anymore," he stated, his voice steady. "I want to help people. I want to use what I have left to make a difference. I can't undo my past mistakes, but I can work to ensure that others don't suffer because of my actions." Emily felt her resolve wavering. She wanted to believe him, yet the scars of her past lingered just beneath the surface. "What do you expect from me, William? A partnership? You think I'll just forget everything you did?" "No, I don't expect that," he replied, his tone sincere. "But I'm willing to put in the work. I want to partner with you, not as a way to regain my status, but to truly help others. I want to do this with you, to learn from you. You've built something incredible here, and I want to support it." Emily sighed, feeling the weight of his words. The idea of collaborating with him was daunting, but perhaps there was an opportunity for something greater, a chance to create change that could benefit those who needed it most. "If I were to consider this partnership, what would it look like?" William smiled, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I have a contract I'd like you to review. It outlines our goals, to provide funding and mentorship for small businesses struggling to survive. We can work together to empower them without seeking personal gain. I want this to be about giving back, not about profit." Emily raised an eyebrow, intrigued but cautious. "And what's in it for you?" "Redemption," he answered simply. "I want to prove to myself that I can be a better man, that I can contribute to a better world. I've spent too long chasing after the wrong things." As she considered his proposal, Emily felt a mix of skepticism and curiosity. This could be an opportunity to truly make a difference, to channel her pain into something positive. It was a risk, but perhaps a necessary one. "I'll look over the contract," she said finally, her voice steady. "But make no mistake, William, if you betray this trust, there will be consequences." "I understand," he replied, stepping back slightly, acknowledging the weight of her words. "I wouldn't expect anything less." As he handed her the contract, their fingers brushed briefly, and for a fleeting moment, Emily felt the tension between them shift. It was a small gesture, but it held the promise of something new, a chance for healing, for growth, for redemption. "Let's see what we can do together," she said. her voice softer now, a hint of hope threading through her skepticism. William nodded, a sense of purpose igniting within him. He had taken the first step toward redemption, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope that he could change his fate and perhaps in doing so, change the world around him. The sun dipped low over the New York skyline, casting long shadows across the bustling streets below, where the hum of life intertwined with the echoes of dreams and aspirations. In a small, makeshift office space, cluttered with papers and the remnants of late-night brainstorming sessions, Emily sat across from William. Their partnership had begun with a tentative handshake, a fragile truce forged from their tumultuous past. Now, as they worked together to breathe life back into struggling businesses, the air around them crackled with potential. William, once a titan of industry, now wore the guise of a humble man. His tailored suit still spoke of luxury, but there was a softness to his demeanor that hadn't existed before. As they reviewed the latest business proposal, Emily couldn't help but notice the way he listened, truly listened, his eyes focused intently on her as she outlined her vision. "Emily, I think we should consider investing more in community outreach programs," he suggested, his voice steady but tinged with an earnestness that surprised her. "If we want these businesses to thrive, we need to show that we care about the neighborhoods they serve." Emily leaned back in her chair, her heart warring with her mind. Part of her wanted to applaud his transformation, to acknowledge the sincere efforts he was making, yet the other part of her, a part shaped by years of oppression and betrayal, whispered reminders of his past arrogance. "That's a good idea, William. But we can't forget that trust is earned, not given. People won't just accept us because we say we care." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I understand that. I can't change the past, but I can work toward a better future. We both can." As they delved deeper into discussions about marketing strategies and community initiatives, Emily felt the weight of her tumultuous history with him begin to lift, if only slightly. The line between revenge and forgiveness grew hazy, and she found herself hoping that perhaps, just perhaps, this was the path to healing. But just as they began to taste the fruits of their labor, the calm was shattered. One late afternoon, as they were wrapping up a meeting with a local bakery owner, Emily received a text that sent her heart plummeting. A news alert revealing a scandal tied to William's past dealings. The headlines screamed in bold letters, "Billionaire's hidden scandal, fraud and deception exposed." Her breath caught in her throat as she read the details. It turned out there had been a cover-up involving financial mismanagement and unethical practices that William had orchestrated before his downfall. The article detailed several businesses that had suffered irreparably due to his ruthless tactics, leaving a trail of broken lives in his wake. "Emily." William's voice cut through her shock, his brow furrowing in concern as he noticed her pale face. "What's wrong?" She looked up, her heart racing. "William, you need to see this." She handed him her phone, her hands trembling slightly as he read the article. His expression darkened, and for a moment the weight of the world seemed to rest on his shoulders. This can't be happening. I thought I had put all of that behind me," he muttered, running a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration and despair. Emily's mind raced. She felt the anger bubbling to the surface, the urge to expose him for the man he once was, the man who had dismissed her with a wave of his hand. But she also saw the man he had become, the one who was trying to make amends. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice low. "I need to address this," he replied, his tone firm. "I can't let this destroy everything we've built. I'll go to the authorities, take responsibility. I need to be honest about my past." Her heart ached at the thought of him facing the consequences of his actions, but she also felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was the final test of his transformation. "And what if they don't believe you? What if they see this as just another ploy? William met her gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of determination and vulnerability. Then, I'll accept whatever comes. I can't run from my past any longer. I owe it to the people I hurt, including you. Emily felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She had the power to expose him, to ensure that he faced justice for the lives he had destroyed. But was it justice she truly sought? Or was it revenge? The line was becoming increasingly blurred, and she found herself grappling with her conscience. Days passed as the scandal unfolded, and the media frenzy only intensified. Emily watched William, who had once embodied arrogance, now transform into a man of humility and remorse. He volunteered to speak at community meetings, sharing his story, encouraging others to learn from his mistakes. His vulnerability resonated with many, and she saw the respect he was beginning to earn. One evening, as they sat in the office poring over potential community projects, she broke the silence. "William, I've been thinking a lot about your past and this scandal. What if we took a different approach? Instead of hiding from it, we could use it as a teaching moment." He looked at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. "How do you mean? What if we collaborated with the authorities and the media? We could create a series of workshops on ethical business practices, using your story as a cautionary tale. It could help prevent others from making the same mistakes." William's expression shifted from surprise to contemplation. That could work. It would show that I'm not just trying to evade responsibility, but actively trying to make a difference. As they crafted their plan, a sense of purpose filled the air. They reached out to local universities, community centers, and even the press to spread the word about their initiative. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and Emily felt a renewed sense of hope. But just as they began to implement their workshops, the authorities came knocking. William's past could not be easily erased, and he was summoned to face charges related to the fraud case. The news hit Emily like a freight train. She stared blankly at the wall of her office, feeling her heart shatter anew. "Emily, I'm sorry," William said, his voice barely above a whisper as he stood before her, hollow and defeated. "I didn't want this. I thought I could make things right." "Are you really sorry, William?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Or are you just sorry you got caught?" He looked at her, his eyes filled with pain and regret. "I was a different man then. I didn't care about anyone but myself. But I've changed, and I want to prove it. This is my chance to make amends, even if it means facing the consequences." Emily felt the tears welling in her eyes, a mix of sorrow and admiration for the man who had once been her enemy. "You may face the consequences, but I can't stand by and watch you go down alone. I'll support you, William. Let's face this together." As the day of reckoning approached, their bond deepened in unexpected ways. Emily stood alongside William as he faced the authorities, her heart pounding in her chest. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension. The judge looked down at him, waiting for his plea. "Guilty," William said, his voice steady yet filled with a sense of finality. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, and Emily felt her heart constrict. As the gavel struck, sealing his fate, she realized that their journey had transformed into something greater than vengeance or redemption. It was about truth, healing, and the power of second chances. With William facing his consequences, Emily found strength in leading the businesses they had built together. They became a beacon of hope for others, a testament to the idea that even the most flawed individuals could change and make a difference. In the end, she understood that her journey was never about revenge. It was about healing. William's story, intertwined with hers, would serve as a reminder that redemption was possible, even in the face of the darkest past.